welcome everyone. As Patrick said, I'm Ryan Purcell, and I am the current president of the WIFDF Athletes Commission, and it's my pleasure to be joining you all today to hear from our 7 panels and presentations. We have over 30 presenters who are sharing their wisdom, expertise, and experience in best practices on Spirit of the Game throughout the global Ultimate community. So let's get started with our first panel. I'd like to invite Ruben Berg to the stage. Welcome, Ruben. Could you please introduce yourself to the crowd?
My name's Ruben Berg, and I was the chair of the Spirit of the Game Task Force, looking into Spirit of the Game and self-officiating. I'm also a member of the WFDF Ultimate Rules Group and was chair for several years before this.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ruben. So, as you may have guessed it, the topic for this presentation is specifically the WFDF Presidential Task Force on Spirit of the Game and self-officiation, which has taken place over the past approximately 1 year. We have some questions and feedback to share from Ruben. So, first question for you, Ruben. Could you please share with the group and the global audience, why was the task force created, and what were some of its main goals? Any information you can share on the composition of the group is also appreciated.
Yeah, so I guess over the last few years, there's been a lot more filming of Ultimate, and there's been a lot more of Ultimate presented with a lot of spectators around. And we kind of identified that there were instances where we weren't showcasing the sport to the best of its capacity. There were times where we had lengthy delays, where people were making discussions. There were times where people were kind of a bit pushing the boundaries of what we think was appropriate in terms of Spirit of the Game. And we thought we might need to take a look at this and see, are there ways that we can improve our current system so that we can have an event that spectators can go and look at and isn't marred by, discussions that last 5 minutes in the middle of a game. We want people to come and watch Ultimate. We want to see people run, we want to see them dive, we want to see them huck, and we don't want to see them just stand around and talk for 5 minutes. So that was one of the main reasons the task force got established. It was made up of 11 people from all around the world with a variety of different backgrounds in Ultimate. We had people from America, we had people from Great Britain, some people from Australia, some people from Europe and South America and Central America, and from Japan. And so we had a really diverse views on what Spirit of the Game was, what self-officiating was. We really set about trying to work out how was it we could put together a really fantastic showcase of what Ultimate is.
Great, thanks. I'm wondering if you can share with the group some of the recommendations and the recent steps that have been taken by WFDF Congress in implementing those recommendations.
So really the biggest recommendation we came up with was this idea of a new WFDF official, which are the game advisors. And we've seen game advisors in place now for several games this tournament. And the game advisor's role is really to provide advice. They're an advisor, so they provide advice. That's why they're called advisors. And the key part of it is that players remain solely responsible for making and resolving all calls. There's never a call that a game advisor is going to make on behalf of a player. It has to be the players making the calls. And that's really fundamentally important in terms of keeping this sport self-officiated. What they will do, though, is they're really there to help the players to do the best job that they can. So they're there to help make sure they meet the time limits between pools. They're there to make sure they're not going offside. They're there to come in if there's a discussion to say, do you need any help about the rules? Do you need some assistance to help you make a good decision here? And then they're there to also say, this has gone on for long enough. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a resolution. The rules say you should treat it as contested, and then the disc will go back, and we're not having discussions that go on for 5 minutes. That's really their most important role. There were a few other recommendations that came out as well from the task force. And at Congress, as you said, there was an approval of some of those additional recommendations. So the role that the game advisors have here at Worlds is slightly different to the one that's been now approved, and we'll see some changes for next future events where the game advisors can now come and actually give advice on their perspective on all plays. So if there's been a foul, they can come in and say, I think this happened, I think they hit their hand, and the players can use that information to help them make a decision.
Fantastic. So I think there are some people out there who maybe have not played with observers or obviously game advisors, only a few of us have at this point. How does this compare to the rules that WFDF previously had in place and the roles that they had for sideline presence?
So it's really not that big a difference to some of the things we already had in place. So for several years now in Woofdoof, we've had timekeepers, we've had scorekeepers, we've had people blowing whistles, but they were there just providing information. They weren't there saying, come on guys, hurry up. So that's the big difference in that regard. They're actually there saying, we want you to keep to time, please keep to time. But we've also had, in the last few years, we've had what's been called line assistants, who were there on the sidelines, signalling what the calls were, but also there to provide advice, just like anyone can, about whether someone was in or out, whether it was up or down, and those sorts of things. And so that was a role we already had. All we've really done is brought that role together and made it more official. So we don't want volunteers who are here just blowing whistles being the same ones who are there giving rules advice. We wanted to make sure that we had a role that was for really experienced people who really knew what they were doing to be able to come and give that advice and support to players. But it really is just a slight add-on to what we already had before. The biggest difference, I think, is that we are actually now trying to train and recruit those people, and we've got a manual about how they can behave and conduct themselves, so we're ensuring that we're keeping that element of self-officiating.
All right. You've preempted my next question in part. I wanted to ask a little bit about the implementation process for people who are watching this video down the line, and they're asking, when will I be playing with game advisors? What's Woofdoof's plans for rolling this out?
So it's really the goal of game advisors is to really work at showcase events, at really high level events where there's lots of spectators or where it's going to be filmed, and it's at those sorts of events that Woofdoof is really going to be working to ensure we have game advisors. But the game advisor manual will be available, and what we're really encouraging people to do is not necessarily make up game advisors in your own country, but try and get people to come to events where there are game advisors so they can see what it's like. One of our recommendations from the task force was also that all federations should actually somehow get some exposure to the US observer system so they can actually see what it's like. I've never actually had the opportunity to experience an observed system, so I find I can't necessarily judge it until I've been able to experience it. And I think that's the case for a lot of players around the world, especially in Europe, that we haven't had the chance to actually experience it. So we're encouraging people to see what it's like, so then everyone can make an informed decision about what they think an officiating model should look like.
And on that note, quickly, can you share with us some early feedback? We've had a few games with game advisors here at WUCC.
Yep.
What have we learned?
So the biggest thing from the game advisors so far has been that they don't have to do anything. And that's really fantastic. It's almost that their presence there just gives all the players a little reminder that they are responsible and they need to take that on board, and really take account of themselves. So just having them there has meant there hasn't been any issues so far. A few times they've had to come on and provide advice, but really what their role is to see if there's a discussion, work out, are they going to sort that out themselves? And if they are, then they just stay off the field. But if they think they need to come in, and a few times they've had to do this now, just only a handful of times, they come on and they hear what is the discussion about, they provide some advice, and then once it's resolved, they'll make sure everyone knows the stall count. They've done that a few times, and then they get off the field.
That sounds like a great start. Final question. Could you just leave us with one thought about what you expect the long-term benefits of this new game advisor system to be?
Well, I think the more we can present Ultimate as a spectator-friendly sport, I know we're pushing towards Olympics and those sorts of things, and to get to the Olympics, we don't need referees. But I think we need to ensure that we can say to outside people, we have a process in place to ensure that things don't go crazy. We have a robust system for having checks and balances, but we can still confidently say that it's self-officiated, that even at World Championships, there's no referees. All the players make and resolve all calls. I think if we can continue to do that, and with the awesome game that we have, then together we have a fantastic product that hopefully can spread to all the world.
That sounds great. If everyone can please join me in giving Ruben a big thanks for his efforts on the task force and for joining us today.